Death is a fundamental and universal aspect of the human experience. It is the point at which a person's physical and biological functions cease, resulting in the end of their life. Death can be defined as clinical death and biological death. Clinical death is a medical term used to describe the temporary cessation of the heartbeat and respiration in an individual. It is typically defined as the point at which the heart stops beating and blood circulation ceases, leading to the absence of any sign of brain function or vital reflexes. Clinical death is different from biological death, which is the point at which the brain can no longer be revived, even with medical intervention. In some cases, clinical death can be reversed if resuscitation is performed within a few minutes, while in other cases, it may lead to biological death. The exact causes of death can be different, but it is typically the result of a combination of factors such as disease, injury, aging, or other medical conditions. The process of dying can also vary greatly, with some people passing away suddenly, while others may experience a prolonged decline in health. Regardless of the cause or manner of death, it is a profound and emotional event that has a significant impact on individuals' families and communities. The concept of death raises important philosophical, religious, and ethical questions, and it continues to be a subject of much study and reflection in many cultures and societies. Subjectively, the experience of dying can vary greatly from person to person and may depend on a number of factors, including their underlying medical conditions, the presence of any terminal illnesses, and their individual psychological and emotional state. Some people may experience dying as a gradual process, where they gradually lose consciousness and slip into a peaceful sleep. Others may experience a more sudden transition, where they pass away quickly and without warning. In some cases, people near the end of life may report having spiritual or mystical experiences, such as feeling a sense of peace or a connection to a higher power. Others may experience a sense of regret or unfinished business. So what happens immediately after death? As was mentioned, clinical death can be reversed in some cases if immediate medical care is provided. Many people who have experienced clinical death come back with vivid memories of the events that happened during their death. This is commonly referred to as near-death experience or NDE. A near-death experience, NDE, is a phenomenon that some people report having after a close encounter with death, such as during a serious accident, a cardiac arrest, or in a drowning incident. These experiences can vary greatly from person to person, but often involve a sense of detachment from the physical body, a feeling of moving through a tunnel, and a sense of peace and calm. During a near-death experience, some people report seeing a bright light, having a feeling of levitation, or having a heightened sense of awareness. Some also report encountering deceased loved ones, religious figures, or other beings of light. These days, because of widespread access to life support and early resuscitations, the number of people who have experienced NDE has increased dramatically. The heart has stopped beating in most of these cases, and if they aren't resuscitated, they would continue going through the dying process. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do it. We will have videos explaining the near-death experience in future in more detail. So, the question is, what happens after this initial phase of subjective experience as NDE? The answer is that we don't have any stories from people who have gone through biological death, for obvious reasons. Most NDE cases are those who have returned to life within a few minutes to a maximum of 1 hour after cessation of heart activity. If this period takes longer, the brain will have irreversible damage, and the person would suffer major disability, so much that they wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone. The question, what happens after we die, is a question that has been asked by people for centuries, and it remains one of the greatest mysteries of human existence. Different cultures and belief systems offer a variety of answers to this question, ranging from the idea of an afterlife or reincarnation, to the belief in oblivion or the end of all consciousness. From a scientific perspective, there is no clear consensus on what happens after death. Some scientists believe that death marks the end of consciousness and all mental processes, while others believe that the mind, or soul, may continue on in some form after death. Ultimately, the answer to this question remains unknown, and it may be one of life's greatest mysteries that continues to captivate and intrigue people across cultures and generations. Some religious traditions, such as Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, believe in an afterlife, where the soul continues to exist in some form after death. In these beliefs, death is seen as a transition from physical life to a spiritual existence, either in heaven, hell, or some other realm. Others believe that death marks the end of all consciousness and the permanent cessation of an individual's existence. This perspective is often associated with philosophical beliefs such as atheism or materialism. Eastern philosophers, including those from Hindu and Buddhist, have various beliefs about what happens to consciousness after death. In Hinduism, the concept of reincarnation holds that the soul is eternal and continuously reincarnates in different physical bodies after death. The ultimate goal of Hindu spirituality is to attain moksha, or liberation from the cycle of rebirth, and union with the ultimate reality of Brahman. In Buddhism, the belief in rebirth is also central, with the understanding that consciousness continues after death and is reborn in another physical form. The ultimate goal of Buddhism is to achieve nirvana, a state of freedom from suffering and the cycle of rebirth. These beliefs about consciousness after death are deeply rooted in the philosophical and spiritual traditions of Eastern cultures. They provide a framework for understanding the nature of existence and the relationship between the physical and non-physical realms. Materialist or naturalist perspectives on what happens after death are based on 20th century scientific evidence and maintain that once a person dies, their consciousness and personal identity cease to exist. However, these views have not taken into account recent developments in quantum physics, as the nature of consciousness remains a central problem for science, and that has yet to be fully understood. Currently, it is not clear whether consciousness is merely a product of brain activity, or if it is a more fundamental aspect of matter. If it were the latter, it would be possible for some form of consciousness to persist after death. The next question that arises is, what is the purpose of life if it inevitably ends in death? Again, it is a philosophical question that has been asked and debated by thinkers for centuries. From a religious perspective, the purpose of life may be seen as fulfilling a divine plan, following religious commandments, or preparing for an afterlife. Different religions have different ideas about this question. Christianity offers a perspective on the purpose of life in light of its belief in an afterlife. According to Christian belief, the purpose of life is to live in a way that pleases God, and to prepare for eternal life with God in heaven. Christians believe that death is not the end, but rather a transition to an eternal life in heaven with God. This belief is based on the teachings of Jesus Christ and the promises of salvation found in the Bible. Christians believe that death is the result of sin, which entered the world through the disobedience of Adam and Eve. But that through belief in Jesus Christ, and acceptance of his sacrifice, they can be forgiven and have eternal life with God. This belief in eternal life gives meaning to life, even in the face of death, and provides comfort and hope to those facing the end of their earthly lives. Muslims believe that death is not an end, but rather a transition from this temporary life to the afterlife. The actions and choices made in this life will determine a person's fate in the afterlife, either in paradise or in hell. In Islam, a person's ultimate purpose is to submit to Allah's will, and to follow His commands as outlined in the Quran and the Hadith. This includes following the 5 pillars of Islam, the declaration of faith, prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage to Mecca. By fulfilling these obligations and living a virtuous life, a Muslim strives to attain the pleasure of Allah, and attain salvation in the afterlife. In Hinduism, the ultimate goal is to break free from the cycle of birth and death and attain moksha. The path to moksha is considered to be a journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth, where individuals strive to attain a state of enlightenment and union with the ultimate reality. This is achieved through various spiritual practices, such as devotion to a chosen deity, meditation, self-reflection, and the performance of virtuous actions. In Buddhism, the purpose of life is to end suffering and attain enlightenment, which is seen as the ultimate release from the cycle of rebirth, and the attainment of a state of inner peace and wisdom. The Buddha is quoted as saying, "The purpose of life is to end suffering." The path to enlightenment is seen as a journey of self-discovery, where individuals work towards purifying their minds, and attaining a state of wisdom and inner peace. By doing so, they hope to attain enlightenment and ultimately find peace and happiness in this life and beyond. From a materialist perspective, the goal of life is not necessarily a predetermined purpose or meaning. Instead, individuals may create their own goals and purposes based on their personal desires, experiences, and beliefs. Some materialists may see the goal of life as seeking pleasure, acquiring wealth and material possessions, or advancing their careers. Many materialists do see the goal of life as maximizing happiness and minimizing suffering. They may also prioritize relationships, growth, and personal development. They emphasize the importance of individual choice, agency, and the pursuit of happiness in the here and now, rather than looking to an afterlife or ultimate purpose. Some materialists may see death as a natural part of life, and simply the end of one's physical existence, while others may see it as a reason to make the most of the time they have, and to live life to the fullest. One thing which seems common between different viewpoints is the concept of immortality. The concept of immortality refers to the idea of never dying, or of having an infinite lifespan. This idea is often contrasted with death, which is the end of life. Throughout history, many cultures and religions have offered the idea of immortality as a way to cope with the fear of death, and to provide a sense of meaning and purpose in the face of our own mortality. For example, some religious beliefs offer the idea of an afterlife, where the soul lives on beyond death, while others posit the idea of reincarnation, where the soul is reborn into a new life after death. In some philosophical and scientific circles, the idea of immortality has been explored as a possibility through advances in medical technology and life extension. The concept of death can be viewed from the subjective perspective, or the consciousness point of view. If we pay attention, we can't subjectively pinpoint the start of our life. That's because the consciousness is not able to experience its non-existence. The same is true after death, if we don't consider the existence of the afterlife. If we pay attention deeply, we see who really we are, is the awareness, or in other words the sense of presence. This feeling of being is never changing. One can remember their childhood, or when they were going to school, and compare it to present time. We realize that this sense of presence has always been the same. This is the background on which all the memories and events of life have happened. If we pay close attention, we see that this feeling of presence is the same for all people. This sense of centrality to the universe. So it can be argued that from the perspective of consciousness, when we die, the next person who is born will be us.